My name is Wafula Strike. I am a Paralympian. I am a mother. I have traveled the world and I've won medals. Some would say I've achieved a lot for a woman whose father was told should let me die because of a disability. Today, I want to tell you what I've learned about disruption. How disruption can be a powerful vehicle or driver for change, and how feminist movements like Me Too and Time's Up must disrupt its thinking if it's to create an equitable world for all women. For me, disruption means interrupting the norm, challenging the status quo, creating space to introduce new ways of thinking and how we do things. It might look like there's only me today on this stage, but there's so many of us today. It's not just me. There's a million of disabled women alongside me today. Disabled women and girls are some of the most marginalized and forgotten people on the planet. We are here today to try and disrupt how we think so that we can actually work together for a richer, more inclusive, and a movement that can bring equality, to all of us. Mine is not a story of victimhood. It's not a story of blame or accusation. This is a story of how all of us together can actually share our experiences and use them to disrupt our way of thinking and create a more compassionate and a world where we can all live together. Disruption first hit my life when I was very young. I was born as a normal, healthy child, and when I was 2.5 years, I was struck down by polio. And it left me actually paralyzed from the waist down. And the villagers did not understand what it was. They believed that I'd been struck down by black magic, and some thought I'd been cursed. They said I should be left to die. They wanted to burn our house down, and because of that, we actually left the village because it was no longer safe for me and my family to live there. When you have a disability, you are the lowest of society. When you have a disability and you are also a woman, you are even lower, very low. The stigma I experienced growing up was really devastating. It took everything away from me. I was broken. I didn't develop self-esteem. I really hated who I was. I had so many demons. I tell you, when you're broken, when you have those demons inside you, when your sense of self and your self-worth are reduced to nothing, it leaves you more disabled in your mind than any physical impairment can. When you are broken, it is also very difficult to rise up and actually make things different. And that was me. If it wasn't for my father telling me I had a place in this life, I wouldn't be here today. My father was told to actually cast me out and leave me to die. He was told she's better off dead, and that I would amount to nothing because I was a woman. When you're a disabled woman in that community, you're not expected to find love, not to find a job, to start a family, or even have a career. I have done all of those things. My father's unwavering support, his conditional love, first actually disrupted my own shame. It disrupted the stigma around me. And it made me believe a new story for myself was actually possible. And this disruption did change my life. I now believe nothing disables somebody, nothing disables you more than staying silent on things that impact your world. In my case, nothing disables me than staying silent on things that impact me. That's why I'm so passionate about using my voice to actually amplify the voices of other disabled women, nationally and globally. Adopting to disruption has given me a platform, and this platform helps me to try and create disruption just on a wider stage on a societal level for all the disabled women. That's why today I'm actually a proud ambassador for a disability rights organization called AD International. And together we are actually an ally to the global disability movement that is supporting women with disabilities, most of them activists in Africa and Asia, to build powerful movements that bring change to the community. And a key focus of our work is to support disabled women in particular. Disability stigma is present in every society. Disability stigma is present in Africa, it's present in Asia, and it can be very oppressive. In the village where I grew up, for example, there was no research or any technology available to explain the cause of my impairment to the community. And it is within that void of understanding that dangerous misconceptions about disability can form. Disabled people are often considered weak, worthless, and in some cases, subhuman. Societies just don't value them. Disabled women are doubly discriminated against of both their gender and their disability. They're often seen as a burden, people who should not be there. And women with disabilities experience a much higher physical, sexual, and psychological violence for longer periods of time, actually much worse than able-bodied women. Unfortunately, too many services and programs that are meant to protect and empower women, such as myself, do not take into account the unique dangers and challenges that these disabled women face. How does a woman with a hearing impairment hear the warning sounds of an approaching attacker? How does a woman with a visual impairment know where to run for protection? And without specific attention and solutions, disabled women have been left behind and actually at a greater risk. AD International did a recent research into violence against women and girls in Tanzania, and it exposed some shocking realities. 9 out of 10 women experienced abuse, not just from men, but also from able-bodied, and also from people who were supposed to care for them. 9 out of 10 women and girls with intellectual disabilities had been abused so many times without intervention from family or community. Our research found that disabled women and girls have such fundamental lack of awareness of their own rights and in relation to violence that many did not even recognize what they were experiencing was in fact abuse. Because of this, most incidents are not reported. And sometimes, even when women get to report these incidents, nothing is done. There's so many obstacles because they cannot just access the support and justice that they require. How does a hearing impaired woman disclose her abuse in a court that does not have a sign language interpreter? How? How does a visually impaired woman work with the police force that has no assistive devices to identify her predator? How? When I hear these stories, I think that so could easily have been me. I am here today. I'm only here today because I had people who believed in me and people who supported me. So many women have been left behind. Society has discarded them. That is why it is so important to me and other organizations, such as AD International, that I work to amplify the voices of these women. And with the right support and infrastructure, change is possible. We have seen women with disabilities form strong groups, become more empowered, and become outspoken. But change only comes when disabled women are actually given a political voice and proper representation. The invisibility of disabled women is not just in the developing countries, even here in Britain. The lack of disabled role models is a serious issue. I often ask myself, where are all the disabled women? Where are they? Where are they in our magazines, on our TV shows, our communities, friendship groups, and our professional networks? Where are they? 1 in 5 women have a disability. 1 in 5 women have a disability. So we should be able to actually call plenty of disabled women to mind. But I wonder how many each one of us can. Disabled women are invisible. And this invisibility means our voices are never heard, our pain is never shared, our abuse never acknowledged. Last year, I was forced to wet myself on public transport because there was no accessible toilet. Can you imagine how that felt? Not just as a human being, but as a mother, as a grown woman. It broke me. But I chose to speak up. I chose to speak about it because I wanted to create change. And that moment of indignity became my fuel for disruption. But every time I spoke about it, it broke me. I wasn't being brave, I was humiliated. This is the 21st century Britain. We shouldn't be talking about people accessing toilets. We shouldn't be talking about people accessing their basic needs. But after I spoke up, I got so many emails from disabled people who'd left their jobs, who'd stopped going to school, who'd stopped attending universities, who'd given up on their careers just because they'd also worked themselves. And the shame and embarrassment that they suffered reduced their lives to barely leaving their houses. And you know what? These stories broke my heart. Disabled people are being robbed of their dignity. We don't want sympathy. We don't want pity. We want opportunities. We want our rights. And in order to achieve this, in order to achieve these rights, we need space in the women's movement. We need the voices of disabled women heard. Otherwise, this is not a movement for women. It is just a movement for able-bodied women when disabled women are left out. The Harvey Weinstein scandal last year prompted a global outpouring of sexual harassment. The sexual harassment experience was the via Me Too and Time's Up movements. I wonder how many of these stories actually came from disabled women. How many? I'm guessing not many. Yet we know that disabled women experience the most violence, and they are the most people that are hit the hardest. That's why I'm asking this new wave of feminism to carry us with them. The women's movement could play a vital role in amplifying the voices of disabled women so that we can finally be heard. At your meetings, I'm asking you, make sure there are disabled women in the room. On your panels, bring them in your leadership teams. Hear their stories. Share their experiences. Bring us into your movements. Broaden the discussion. While able-bodied women are fighting and talking about the pay gap, remember that disabled women are still struggling and fighting to access the basic things such as an education, sexual health, sanitary towels, and in some cases, just an accessible toilet. In a truly inclusive society, it would be the norm to see women with disabilities represented in all areas. And in this I mean the media, politics, engineering, medicine, or even the catwalk. What is your first reaction when you see a disabled person approaching you? Shock, sympathy, pity? It's natural to feel those things. I think it is natural because the sight of disabled people is still so unusual. And when people see this, they react differently. Until disability is part of the mainstream, these barriers will always exist. These are the barriers that divide and separate us from so many of you. We need structural, systemic change, proper access, barriers broken, barriers in the environment and barriers in the mind of the non-disabled society about disability. We need to reimagine society with disabled people moved from the shadows to to be part of the everyday life. I am disabled. I am female, and guess what? I am black. So much of my life and experiences have been outside the status quo. So much of my life and experience have been invisible. But for change to come, for the disabled people, for us to live and move from that margin, it falls on the minorities to be disruptors of the status quo, to use their experiences as fuel, to challenge the known and bring their stories into light. Creating social change requires changing social thinking. What do you think when you hear disabled? Do you see me as unfortunate? Do you see me as a victim? Do you see me as a hero? I want only to be human. I want to be met with actually the same openness as anyone else. I want you to give me your ears to hear my story and to hear the stories of many other disabled women, to allow my experiences and the experiences of all those other disabled people. This is not an accusation, but this is a plea from me. This is a plea so that we can actually grow collectively as human beings, to deepen our understanding of each other's experiences and to move towards for a better and more inclusive world. Ladies and gentlemen, to me, diversity is being invited to a party, and inclusion is being asked to dance, and I want to dance.